being made by different groups here, some working on military bases in Alabama, places like that. They try to infiltrate so they could hear about planes are going to come in and drop firebombs, what they do. And preempt it, keep it from happening. And they were indicted and convicted and sentenced to some of them life sentences. So they cut those back. The case is still pending. But do we realize how we brutalized the Cuban people? Which literally, if we took each one of them and lashed them in the back every year, our sanctions on that country, what right do we have to blockade that country?
Absolutely.
In the face of that, they have worked miracles. They have saved tens of millions of lives with their medical programs. They've gone into poor countries all over the world with vaccines for 5 communicable diseases for children. They've saved millions of children. And they've not asked for a penny for it. They've brought in people to educate as doctors from all over the poor world. They have you can't walk 6 blocks of Savannah without coming to a community health care system. If you've got a real problem, they'll put you in a car or an ambulance right away, take you down to some of the most sophisticated stuff. I have a brother who died of spinal meningitis. They have invented the only really known vaccine that's effective for curing spinal meningitis. And yet they have the highest reading in math scores of any country in Latin America. Constantly. On peanuts, they do it. Their culture flourishes. It can be ballet, it can be native Cuban. And yet we're destroying that revolution. Because we're so big and we just keep pounding away at it. Let me say something that's worried me a little bit about judges aren't God. Courts aren't God. We know, at least I know, what Dr. DeWay did is right. If you don't stand up in a moral crisis and do something, this is that is a moral crisis to prevent wars and aggression. I don't know what is. So, of course, we don't want him to suffer. Of course, we don't want him to be punished. But the court is wrong if it convicts him. I've had 2 times in my life when I've worked with people who have overcome a very powerful military government by nonviolent means. The first time that it happened when I was president was over the years. Beginning about 1974 and 5, the Iranian people began collectively to realize that they were suffering misery that they couldn't stand. And they started getting out on the streets. They would march. By 77, 78, they could put 2 million people out on the streets. I marched with them many times. There'd be hundreds of people. Saturday they'd have women over here and men over here, Saturday from our perspective. The women would walk up to the soldiers and they'd have a long stem rose. They'd try to stick the stem of the rose down the rifle and say, why do you shoot for your sisters, your brothers? The last year of the Shah, in the face of, they closed down everything. They closed down the bazaar, they closed down the Atomic Energy Commission, they closed down everything. The sky, which is always heavily polluted over Tehran, you can see Mount Demavon at 17,000 feet, the first time in 2 decades, because the eye was. And he killed 43,000 people that year. At Jolly Square, what they call Black Friday, on U.S. fabricated Huey helicopters with 50 caliber machine guns in the bay. Swirling over these crowds, many people wearing burial shrouds, literally, because they thought they might be killed. Machine gun down 2,000 people. So what happened one day? The Shah has to get up and leave. He left. He gave up. He couldn't take it. Same thing happened with Marcos. Marcos was a very brutal military man. People just gathered. They waited. I saw 500,000 people waiting for Benito Aquino's widow. They'd be chanting for hours and brought his son, Corey, Corey, Corey. Finally, Marcos had to give up and leave. He had his millions stashed away. It didn't show up. They drove him out by their collective power. That's what you have to do to overcome.
When Nelson Mandela was released from prison, one of the first groups he thanked and recognized was the Cubans, and Cuban doctors and Cuban soldiers who intervened in the Puerto Cunival, for instance, and turned the tide against the white minority regime militarily and created the context that enabled Mandela to get out. Mandela, of course, never backed off the position that in some situations you have to take up arms. The United States was founded with the taking up of arms against the duly constituted authority. And would you call Nelson Mandela a terrorist? The lies and crimes of the George Bush regime, the way I see it, you know, there was the Cold War, great crimes were committed in the name of fighting communism, but suddenly with the demise of the Soviet Union, there was no credible enemy. The war on drugs was finessed, and what would you do to keep this permanent war economy going? The United States has put all its treasure, all its creativity into this war economy. There needed to be a new enemy. Presto, on 9/11, suddenly there's this new enemy, and all of this psychological warfare kicks in about terrorism, and you can unify every dissident in the world with this idea, and all the laws are changed, and the military is getting huge budgets, and George Bush is signing the checks and signing the authorizations. And who knows, you know, he is a front man in a way. Somebody's pulling his strings, but he's responsible. He's the signing authority. And you're a younger person. You may not have a sense of how quickly things are declining. You may think this is just the way it's always been. No, this is not the way, you know, as bad as the mind control and corruption in the Cold War, how it was exploited. We're into something new here. Yes, sir. Or yes, Peggy.
Thank you, Phil. Mr. Clark, last year when George Bush came here on March 17th, a number of us met together and decided that no matter what, we weren't going to permit him to come here and use Calgary as a way to launch himself as a private citizen, that in whatever way we did it, we were going to meet him and make him very unwelcome as a war criminal. Now, for a city that is controlled by the oil and gas monopolies, at noon hour in the middle of the week, we were managed to organize 500 people to come out and make sure he wasn't welcome. And you know that because you and Splitting the Sky and Lawyers Against War were very instrumental and helpful in the work that we did in terms of exposing him as a war criminal. And we're still here together to stand with Splitting the Sky for the stand that he took and attempting to make a citizen's arrest of him. Now, something that you said, I think it was maybe one of the first questions that somebody asked you, really struck a chord with me when you said that it's going to take involving millions of people to deal with the situation we're faced with, where every day the international laws and national laws are violated with impunity. I'm not quoting you, but it's kind of, to me, it was a kind of a point that you were making. And it seems that when there is such violation of international law and such crimes against humanity as when Iraq was invaded illegally, now with the situation with the siege of Gaza and that horrific, brutal attack on the humanitarian aid, humanity does come to the fore. Humanity came to the fore in 2003, and humanity's come to the fore now. You know, we're seeing tens and thousands of people all over the world. But when you made the comment about involving millions, it struck me that it's so key. And involving millions, yes, to bring them on the streets, but involving people as conscious thinking human beings to fight for and defend humanity. So it strikes me that we do need to involve millions, but people have to be involved on the basis of renewing our societies, renewing our political systems, and renewing the international